And there we go. Again, thank you for joining us today for FI Connects. Conversation is specifically designed for ITFs, coaches, and media coordinators, although we've had lots of educators and leadership joining us. And our topic today is really thinking forward as we're closing the year down, taking a moment to step back, reflect, but then looking ahead. August will be here before we know it. And there's a lot of unknowns right now. So we have with us today a fantastic facilitator. Tierney Fairchild is here, and she's going to be sharing some strategies with us when we're considering how do we support that new school year, considering variables that we may not know yet. Will we be back in school? Will we be continuing remote learning, or is it going to be a blend? We don't know yet, but we need to start thinking of these things before August approaches. So as I said, I introduced myself. My name is Jacqueline Stevens. I'm going to be moderating your chat and kind of guiding the facilitation of our conversation today. But really, I'm excited to turn things over to Tierney. She's one of the amazing educators who has volunteered to share some ideas and some content. And I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself. And Tierney, I'm going to drive for you. So you just let me know when you're ready for me to click and move on.
Very good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, I'm so glad to be here with you. I'm so glad to see so many familiar faces. This is a little photo capture of my checkered past in education. I am kind of like the Renaissance woman of education. I've done a little bit of everything. And so I started off as a classroom teacher, which I think is the most amazing thing in the whole wide world. Teachers are the best people in the world. And so after doing that for too many years that I want to share with you, but you can probably see my gray hair since I'm not going to the hairdresser right now. I became an instructional coach after years in the classroom, primarily in Cabarrus County. And then I worked for 5 years for the North Carolina New Teacher Support Program, both at Western Carolina University and UNC Charlotte. I am an EdTPA facilitator for Johns Hopkins, as well as a nationally calibrated EdTPA scorer. So if you had to do that, I'm sorry, but there are real people behind those scores. So it's a good work that everyone does. And that all led me to start my own company called Teachers in Bloom. And I provide instructional coaching and professional development to teachers around the state. I'm primarily in Stanley County and Rowan Salisbury schools. So that's a little bit about me. So next slide. So today we're going to talk about retrieval practice, and my chat window is gone and I don't want to click around. So Jacqueline, I'm going to let you handle the chat if you don't mind, but just off the top of your head, let's kind of take a pulse of the room and see what you think retrieval practice is. If you guys could just share that in the chat. Are people sharing, Jacqueline? I can't see.
Yeah, Brian has shared finding things that you have lost.
Oh.
I think some others are starting to type in there as well.
Okay,
so
very good.
You've got everybody thinking this afternoon, Tierney.
Okay, I see.
Focused review, retrieval practice as a brain research strategy for improved learning, says Kim. Teresa says it's a focused review. Josh has added grabbing your kids before you leave for something.
Oh, I love that. Okay, very good. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So you're on it. You're on the right track. Retrieval practice is the art of recalling information. And that's what you said, many of you that Jacqueline shared with me. And I want to think about how we're going to use retrieval practice as we start the new year. We don't really know what the new year is going to look like. We might be face-to-face. We might be virtual. We might be hybrid. Nobody really knows for sure. And one thing that I'm really focusing on right now with my teachers planning in the summer, because now we're really almost in the summer, and then going into the new year, is that we not focus on the gap. I'm already hearing some of that talk, from instructional leaders and from teachers like, oh no, we're never going to get caught up. We're never going to get caught up. And though I know that we need to acknowledge that there was a gap in the access that many students had, I want us to understand that the whole world took a pause in education. Everybody. So if there was ever a time to practice a growth mindset, it's when we go back in the fall and focus on the potential. And we also need to kind of grasp of where we are. And without focusing on the gap, we need to get a grasp of where the students are and how we can grow them. So one great way to do that is through the practice of retrieval practice. So next slide. Thank you. So the strategies that I'm using, among them come from this book, Powerful Teaching. And I love this book. I'm a big pedagogy book nerd. And so I love this book. It's by Dr. Agarwal and Patrice Bain. And they are cognitive scientists. And they have many more strategies in this book. But one of them that we're going to talk about today is retrieval practice. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So I know this is like the #1 rule on Google Slides, not too many words. Sorry, I did that. Just take a minute to read that, what retrieval practice is. Okay, so focus on the words in red. We're going to apply, we want our students to apply multiple examples. So when we retrieve what they know, we don't want it just to be a regurgitation of facts. We want them to tell us several things and how they can connect them. And it also needs to be intentional instead of just asking questions. Okay, next slide. So why do we do retrieval practice? We want them to retain over the long term. I was the queen of when I was in high school, like, you know, I'm going to learn all this. I'm going to make an A. I have to make an A. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to cram and I'm going to forget it. And thankfully, then when I went to college, I learned a different way to learn. And so we looped, and we want students to do that so that they can hang out in higher order thinking and transfer their knowledge. Retrieval practice, and this is what I was referencing earlier, really helps us find some gaps in their knowledge. Again, disclaimer, we don't want to focus on the gaps. We want to find them, make them aware of their own learning, and then find ways to engage them. Okay, next slide. So there are 3 stages of learning, and I'm by no means a degreed cognitive scientist, but when I think about this, all teachers, all educators are cognitive scientists. We talk about encoding, and we talk about storing learning, and we talk about retrieval, even though we may not use those exact words, because I know that within a minute, educators are in their room, they assess how their kids learn, they have multiple learning styles, and they know how to teach it. They understand when students get it, and they help them store it. And what we're going to talk about today is retrieval, helping them access it and bring it back up to mind. Next slide. And feel free to jump in, like chat, ask questions. I always think like if you have an idea or if you have a question, somebody else does too. All right, so we're going to do a little retrieval practice on our own right now. So if you have a piece of paper, if you could just do this on your own, I want you to jot the answers to these questions. 1, what did you eat for breakfast? What year did man first walk on the moon? What was your favorite vacation? And what is one thing you have learned in professional development since school closings? And I'm now practicing appropriate wait time. Okay. So what did you eat for breakfast? What year did man first walk on the moon? What was your favorite vacation? And what is one thing you've learned in professional development since school closings? So if we could go to the next slide. So now let's look at the way that, how we have to retrieve that information. We talked about encoding. That's when you learn something. We talked about storing it, and we talked about retrieving it. So clearly some stuff is stored longer than others. So like, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? That hasn't been stored long. So the retrieval wasn't hard. If I asked you what you ate for breakfast 2 weeks ago, that might be more difficult. So I want you to think about, did you intentionally encode the information? How long has it been stored? And how many times have you retrieved that information? That's the key right there. How many times have you retrieved it? So if we practice retrieval strategies and practices frequently with our students and give the teachers we coach the tools to do it, then it's going to help them retain and learn and hold that information. Okay, next slide. So now we're going to get to the good stuff. All right, so I'm going to just give you several strategies, like lots of them. And here are some of them: think, pair, share, challenge grids, concept maps, brain dumps, flashcards, and golden tickets. And before I go on, I want to tell you, I'm going to give you a hyperdoc at the end of the session with links to several ways to incorporate these strategies. So always when I give a PD and I give the survey, people are like, oh my gosh, that was so much information. I need more time to process it. And I apologize for that, but I'm just going to give it to you and then you'll have all the resources at the end. Okay, so next slide. First one, brain dump. Okay, next slide. I just wanted you to see my little Bitmoji because I'm so cute because I made her thin even though I'm not. Okay, so there are several names for brain dumps. Free recall, brain drain, brain pop. You can read all those. Teachers call them different things. And I love this idea for when we go back to school. Think about what we could do with, you know, that everybody's going to assign that. Tell me about your experience with COVID-19. Write an essay. I think about how we could do that differently and how we could do like above the line and below the line, like a brain dump. What were the positive things above the line of COVID-19? What were the negative things if we choose to talk about COVID-19? So think about all these ways you can use brain dumps. Next slide. So here's one way, pen and paper brain dumps. You just give students a topic and they just go with it, kind of like a graphic organizer. And as we've gone to virtual learning, I think that we all, especially those first couple weeks, we're just drowning in trying to just absorb all these digital resources. And I took a step back myself and I said, wait a minute, what's wrong with students and teachers writing something on a piece of paper and holding it up to the camera and talking about it? So I think we need to still give students opportunities to do that if we're still virtual. Okay, next slide. So if we are virtual, here are some ways, some resources to do digital brain dumps. You can use Flipgrid. And so then you just give them a topic and then they just roll with it. They record their brain dump. Then students can watch each other's. So this is a good time for me to say this, and y'all just jump in and say anything. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm just like vomiting words at you. But anyway, we don't want retrieval practices just to be a regurgitation of facts. That's not good teaching, good learning. So we want them to be able to connect the dots, connect the ideas. So one way is after students do a brain dump to have students then comment on each other's. And there are several ways you could do that. If you're in a room, you could have a gallery walk with big chart paper around. If we're digital, you can use Flipgrid or Padlet. Another way is Socrative. I love Socrative because students, you know, then they have to produce the information from the question that you set up and really think about it. And then in Socrative, you can have them vote on like, what's the best one? Or that's another way to get engagement. Okay, next slide. So again, all these digital strategies. I know at the beginning, my teachers who I support were telling me basically stop with the resources. Like I can't open my email anymore and have new resources. My students just can't handle all these new mediums. So true. So if you're introducing something new, make sure that you scaffold it. So if your assignment is on Flipgrid, then make sure you have a little exercise to learn how to use Flipgrid. Give them a tutorial, go through it with them. Make sure you scaffold the medium before they jump right into the assignment. Okay, next slide. All right, another retrieval strategy, challenge boards, one of my favorites. So it looks like a Jeopardy board, right? So you see you have the questions there, see how that works? And so they get points for the questions that are asked, and you can see that they get more points for going farther back and retrieving from information that was earlier. So like in the last lesson, if there was a question from the last lesson, they get 1 point. 2 weeks ago, they get 2 points. Last month, 3 points. And then way back, 4 points. So next slide. So here's another example, and I'm going to give you all these examples. There are great websites from these people, a great website from the people who wrote this book with these examples. So same sort of thing there. Okay, next slide. My very favorite challenge board is a challenge grid. Look at that. They wrote the questions themselves. What a great way for differentiation, to have the students be accountable. If they can retrieve the questions to ask the questions, determine how many points they get, that's the area of learning where we strive to get them. Okay, next slide. Anybody have any questions or anything they want to say? Is everybody there? I can't see anything except the screen. So. Okay.
Or if you want to open the mic, feel free.
Yes, thank you, Jen. Okay, and flashcards, next one. Who knew that there's an exact science to flashcards? Again, I'm going to give you a couple articles about using flashcards. Here's some of the key points to make them effective. Students should make their own flashcards. If they're using pre-made flashcards, they don't learn as much. They need to mix pictures and words. They can use mnemonic devices to create mental images. And this is a key point that research shows that helps them retain information from the flashcards if they use it from both directions, asking the questions and also looking at the answers and creating the questions. Also, only one question per card. And so then that means that multiple complex concepts need to be broken into multiple questions, and they need to say them out loud. So how does that look in a classroom? Like sometimes we say, okay, study your flashcards, and they're doing it silently. Have them pair up and share and say them out loud. Okay, next question, next slide. All right, power ticket. Again, one of my favorites. Next slide. A power ticket is great. It's almost like an exit ticket. So look at this. What did we talk about today? Imagine that you give your teachers to share with them, and also be thinking about like all the different content areas, because this is heavy on the social studies because that just lends itself to these questions. But think about how you could do this in math, in band. Gosh, what's band going to look like in the fall? Oh my goodness. So much to consider. So what did we talk about today? Look at how this is set up. So let's say that the Cuban Missile Crisis is what we talked about today. That was our objective. So you have them write one fact, a second fact, and a third fact. Then yesterday we talked about the Cold War alliances. They write facts from that. Last week, last quarter, and last semester. So that is a great way to get them to retrieve. All right, next slide. So what comes after the power ticket? And I talked about this before. We don't want just a regurgitation of facts because that's just not fun and not good learning. So after they've done all this retrieval, find a way to get them to think, pair, and share. If it's in a classroom, we know how to do that. We know how to get them to do that in person. Next slide. But how does that look digitally? And I actually did a PD with a few of my teachers on this. Like we worked on it together to figure out how to do digital think, pair, share. And it was super successful. So just like Zoom breakout rooms, that's so easy. And then they come back together. Padlet, you pose a question and then they answer, they can pair up or they can do it in small groups. And we also talked about Socrative and Flipgrid. We used those four platforms. We worked with those. So what are some resources that you might think would work for a digital think, pair, share that I didn't mention? If you'd put that in the chat or just open your mic, that's fine too. Anybody say anything, Jackie? I can't see.
Tierney. This is Christy Edwards. One thing I used the other day when I was doing the Think, Pair, Share, it was with a group of students. And I did go old school, like you said. I had them on their sheet of paper to hold up their sheet of paper to the screen. But I told them ahead of time what we were going to do. And so I had them like divide their piece of white paper into 4 sections. Some of them had whiteboards at home. But then I had them hold those up. And because we're a G Suite school, we're not using Zoom, and so we're using Google Meet, so that we don't have the breakout rooms. But that was it was a very small group. It was only 4 students anyway, but they think, pair, share that way.
That's perfect, and I think that's so awesome to have them do what feels comfortable, like what they might do in a classroom, and just write it and share it. I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any other ideas for think, pair, share? Okay.
Hey, Tierney, it's Kim.
Oh, go ahead.
Hey, Tierney, it's Kim. I put some of the ones that I've used in the chat: Tri-Sider, Dot Storming, Jamboard. Those are all good tools. I think what you're really sharing too is that as teachers to pick one tool that can be used in a lot of different ways for the fall, so that when we're doing retrieval practice, it's about the retrieval of the information and not about another tool. So given us time over the summer to really think about what worked this spring and then what we can use and pick something, because all these tools you're sharing, Tierney, can be used in so many different ways, which I just love. Yeah. And just a shout out for the flashcards. I love that Research Now supports that.
I know, it's so great, because I mean, we, even back in the day, we did those, and they work, they really work. And like I said, in that hyperdoc at the end, you'll have access to those articles, and I hope you'll be able to, because everybody has so much time, I hope everybody will have time to really dig into those and see what that's all about. Thank you for sharing that, Ken. You said it so well. I'm going to give another plug for the book. I don't get rewards for this or anything, but if you haven't read the book Learning First, Technology Second, that is an amazing book. And I've really been thinking about that too, because when we were kind of just thrown into virtual learning, it seemed like everything was like, we're all learning technology. And I think you said that so well, Kim, that it's about the retrieval and what we're learning instead of the tool. So how does learning first and technology second look in a virtual world? And I think that's something we as instructional leaders really have to think about to help our teachers navigate and make it easy for the kids. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. Was somebody else going to say something?
I was just going to share in the chat. I mean, Kim already shared. She added tricider.storming, whiteboard.if, which is a great tool if you haven't played with that one. Kathy also shared, collaborative Google Docs in small groups. We've got Jamboard on the list, and Kathy shared Wakelet as a tool that she uses to support this.
Oh, yes, Wakelet. Yes. Yeah, Jackie, I want you to do a tutorial on Wakelet. I think that would be fabulous.
Wakelet is amazing, and they've been doing a lot of upgrades. So.
Okay, yeah, I know you were talking about that in a previous session, and I'm just waiting for that one. That would be great. Okay, thank you for sharing, guys. Next slide. Okay, and then concept map. And everybody I know has used concept map. Next slide. Let's talk about what they are. So they do so many things. They require students to identify the main idea. They cause them to think about how concepts are related, which is what we really want them to do. It causes them to access prior knowledge and to make inferences. Look how many standards across the content areas are met just right there. Identify main ideas, concepts are related, prior knowledge, make inferences. So I love concept maps. Next slide so we can look at some examples. So you can have them just draw one. They can put the idea in the center. And like when I do PD, I like to do this. Like, what are we talking about today? If we're in a room, just start one big concept map in the middle of the table. And then as you go off into the ideas, you can have teachers add, what they're thinking. Why not do the same thing in a classroom with the students and let them just create their own? In some classes I took one time, we started a concept map at the beginning of the semester, and then we had to add to it as we went. And it was a great retrieval tool to, think back and look, oh, that was pretty cool how that connects to this. So I'm all about the sketch noting and the doodling and the drawing, because again, brain science tells us that really helps students retain. So that's one example. Next slide. So you can also give them a template if you want to. This works really well. There are all sorts of digital graphic organizers that you can use, and I'll share those with you later. Lots of concept maps in that format. Okay, next slide. So now here's the big thing that makes everybody gasp when we talk about retrieval practices. In this book, Powerful Teaching, that I shared with you at the beginning, they talk about the research that shows retrieval practice should not be used as an assessment. And we are always, as educators, wondering how we can get grades. We've been through that now in this virtual world, where we realize that if we were giving grades now, we're grading economic status and access to broadband. So we have to think about why we give grades. So when you're using retrieval practices, approach it almost as a game, like those challenge boards and the power grids and the power tickets and all that stuff, and don't use it as a grade. Notice that they had points, which is fun because kids will get all behind points, and teachers will too, but don't take a grade on it. And when you get into this website, you'll see more about why that is. Okay, going on, next slide. So now is the bit.ly for the hyperdoc that I said I would share.
I've gone ahead and I put that in the chat.
Okay, very good. Okay, so when you're able to access it, you'll see that I've given you tools and strategies for each of the things that we've talked about today. Please feel free to share this with your teachers, with your coaches, whoever you support. If you would do that, that would be great. So I've given you sample challenge boards, challenge grid templates, and those just look like Jeopardy labs. And so that's a website, some digital brain dumps, etc. Ways to do think, pair, share, more tools for all of those. And then I always like to just give you like extended resources so that you can do further reading and further research, because why should what you have be what I just picked? You might want to look at something different. So the authors of the book I mentioned, Powerful Teaching, have a video that explains how they sort of came about, a researcher and a classroom teacher, to write this book, and the research that they did with actual students and learning. So there's a video there that you might want to watch and share with your teachers when you introduce retrieval practices to them. And then powerfulteaching.org is their website. I highly encourage you to log on to that, sign up. They'll give you updates. You can get emails because they're constantly updating that with more ways to retrieve information for students. And then this is how to develop culturally responsive teaching and distance learning. I think that's really important to check out that sort of thing, check out that article. And because, we don't know what's going to happen. So I think that always has to be in our mind. We're prepared a little more now. We don't have just like 48 hours to switch to virtual learning if that happens, but that's a great article for that. And then here's the one, College Info Geek, about flashcards. So there's the hyperdoc. Yep, fabulous. Okay, so we can go back to the presentation. So what I would like for you to do now is to tell me which retrieval strategy you're most excited about sharing with your teachers. Is it going to be a brain dump, challenge board, power ticket, flashcards, concept map?
From the chat, it's looking like a lot of people like the power ticket, the challenge boards. So we've got some love for the brain dump as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, lots of folks liking the power ticket and the challenge board, and many of them are finding it hard to choose.
All right, that's good. That's good. All right, very good. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Also, challenge board power tickets, especially the one where you wouldn't start with this one, but the one where you get students to create their own. What a great differentiation tool and enrichment especially for our high flyers. So, okay, so I told you I was going to like vomit a bunch of information to you, and I did, because that's kind of the way I roll. And so let's go to the next slide. And if anybody has any questions, if you want to talk about it, ask any questions, anybody have anything they want to add or say, or this is super strange that I can't see any of you. I don't know what I did, but I have just this little window and I can't see your faces or the chat, and I'm so sorry.
You may find like you could minimize the share your screen. Yeah, well then maybe you can see everybody. But
oh well, now everybody want to buy that. Okay, well.
Feel free to you can open your mic if you have a question to share, or you can write it in the chat.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Tierney, it's Marquise. How are you?
Marquise, hello! How are you?
Great. I'm great. I just wanted to thank you for all the information today. It's great, and I was just wanting to see you and hear from you.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. Oh my gosh, I gotta find this window so I can see everybody because I saw your names coming up. How fabulous. Well, thank you for that. I hope it's useful information. I like having it all in one place and then just pushing it out to the teachers. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Okay, so here's my contact information. And one thing that I think I always try to look for a silver lining in everything, because the disaster of a pandemic and having to switch basically to everybody's at home so quickly is the collaborative spirit of educators. I always knew it was there because teachers are amazing, but the way everyone has pulled together to collaborate to put students at the center and help them through this transition. And a large part of that for me has been FI Connects. These sessions have been amazing. And if this is your, one of your first times coming, I don't know if it's like a regular crowd or whatever, but it has been amazing. So thank you so much, Jacqueline, for doing all that. So here's my email address, teachersinbloom@gmail.com, and my phone number. I am like an open book and just like a big old teacher nerd and a coach nerd. So anytime you want to call me, talk to me, have me come PD, come do PD, just please, please, please be in touch with me. I would love to hear from you. And then on the next slide are just resources I use for the presentation. Most of those are in the HyperDoc, but that's for you, there for you as well. Because part of my checkered past I didn't mention, I was a media coordinator for a little bit, so it's very important to always cite your sources.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for modeling that as well.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, that's all I have.
Are there
So
any questions? Right, if there are any other questions, feel free. I'm going to drop the PDF of our slides into the chat, but we are not quite done yet. So when, Tierney, again, thank you for these strategies. And I have a question that I kind of want to pose to everyone. Since we have a lot of folks in our session that have the role of coach or ITF or media coordinator, lead teacher, you're responsible for kind of supporting and helping other teachers. These are great for the classroom, but I'm wondering if anyone had any thoughts about how they could leverage these strategies with your professional development. I've been getting lots of calls in the last week about what's August professional development going to look like? Like, what do we do? Should we do something in July? Will people show up? I mean, there's lots of questions about what that beginning of the year for teacher support is going to look like. And I just want to throw that question out there if anyone had some ideas or maybe want to share maybe what they were maybe thinking about, or if some of these strategies that Tierney shared, you're thinking, oh, I could throw that in my professional development. So I thought I'd just throw that out there.
Well, Jackie, I'll answer that. I am planning BT orientation, and we've already made the decision for, in some places, to make it be virtual because, we're looking at those CDC reports, and I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but the projection is that in August, there's going to be a peak in the South again. So we want to be prepared with like really great stuff for the beginning teacher orientation. So I am using these strategies. I'm going to use a concept map for everything that we work, so they can see how that all connects, how the teacher evaluation goes with the standards and that sort of thing. And so I'll be using these digital tools. So yeah, using those.
And I see in the chat, Teresa shared that, we definitely need to focus on what's working well. I mean, again, reminding everybody we were thrown into this with no notice. So focusing on what was working and what we've learned, and to really take an opportunity to reflect on what was learned during this time. I think that's so true, Teresa. Amanda shared that she's got a Padlet where she's just sharing stuff with her staff, that ongoing resource hub. Brian shared he's been thinking a lot about that. And they're doing some different strategies, both face-to-face and remote. So it kind of sounds like blended, right, Brian? Some virtual and developing resources to meet those staff needs. Modeling strategies in PD that can carry over the classroom, right? Because it's a lot of our schools and districts are making their remote learning plan, right, for the state. And one of those points is to have opportunities for students to practice. And we know remote learning is, it's probably not going to end. We don't know what's coming. But then, being in the South, we have a lot of weather-related delays. And we've had, over the last 3 years, a lot of schools out. So maybe it's not a pandemic, but maybe we have these tools in place. So also kind of reminding people that this isn't a one-off, but that this can really be leveraged. Kathy's sharing she's using Google Classrooms to develop grade level reviews, best tools, ideas. So the chat has got lots of different ideas. These are all great. Thank you all for sharing so much. Because I know that's a question in the back of our minds that maybe we haven't had time yet to solidify. And Kim shares she's talking with teachers. They're doing concept maps. Definitely, if you're not talking to your staff about what they need, I mean, survey, poll, have coffee chats virtually, find out what their fears are and what they think they may need. But then pose those really good questions of reflection about, so they don't forget all the great things that they've learned, because we've been in hyper mode and hyperdrive and however you want to call it. Oh, Tanya, thank you. So many great PD opportunities already exist. Work smarter, not harder. Yes, thank you. And Kat, the FI MOOC courses. Yes, thank you. They're free. I'll drop the URL for where to find information on those before we leave. Different sources like Ditch That Textbook, online learning courses. And not everyone, Teresa points out, not everyone's in the same boat. We've lost some of that face-to-face time in the classroom. So that is going to have an impact.
Jackie, you mentioned that the weather-related school closings. I also know that several districts are incorporating e-learning days, and some have already had them. I know Rowan and Salisbury did, but some are adding those to kind of have less face-to-face time, during the week. And so I really think that our virtual game needs to be strong if we're going to have e-learning days. So all these PDs and tools are great to use with our teachers.
Very true. I just dropped the link to where those their MOOC Eds, Massive Open Online Courses for Educators is what that stands for. And we have a wide variety of courses that are running and some that are coming up. One in particular that I was going to share before we all left. Registration is open for what we're calling a practical guide to remote learning, some really foundational basic strategies that we have curated. So we are in the midst of designing that course based on all the things we've been doing over the last 2 months and boiling that down. So registration is open for that, and you'll see that on that website. But then we have a fantastic course on social emotional learning. I know a lot of people have been talking about it, but what does that look like to share with our teachers? What are some strategies for that? So that is also available. So all of these courses, while they usually run 6 weeks, right now we're just having them open so people can explore, go in. If you complete the assignments, they're worth CEUs. If you just want to go in and grab good stuff, but you don't feel like you have the time to do all the things, it's free. Go in, get those resources, use what's going to help and support you. So I just want to share that. So I've been involved in creating a lot of those courses. They're really good and we revamp them all the time, but I know right now they're really relevant in supporting folks, and also teachers that need CEUs or get those credits, right, that they're seeking for licensure, considering that half of our school year has flipped on a dime. So, and with that being said, it's hard to believe that it's been 11 weeks for many of us since schools closed, and it's roughly 11 weeks until school will open for many of us, whatever that will look like. So we're smack dab in the middle right now this week. I looked at the calendar and I was kind of surprised to see that. And, students are going to be back or online or in a blended situation. And we don't know what to expect yet. But I want to open our forum, and our focus was today for strategies to support you in your new school year. Things to think about as you're supporting teachers, as you're supporting students, and as we're supporting their families in what we don't quite know what the future will be. So let's see how many people. We tend to, so right now we have 41 people, and we tend to have an opportunity for breakout rooms for people just to share, connect, and collaborate. And my question, we've been doing a lot of reflecting over these last 11 weeks, and it's come up in conversations as other coaches at the Friday Institute that we really think when all of this happened, we went into crisis mode, and many of our educators, they just forgot really good strategies and sound practice because we were in a crisis. That makes a lot of sense. We found ourselves kind of sharing models and tools that teachers know and are familiar with. They just needed a new lens or a new flavor to apply to this remote learning situation. So I think it's really important for our teachers to be reminded, like, they know good stuff. And as coaches, it hasn't changed that much, just what it looks like. Does that make sense? So we found that we were saying things to teachers, and our feedback from surveys that we were getting, they were like, these light bulbs were going off and they were super excited by these ideas, but these were older models. So we don't need to reinvent anything necessarily. We just need to rethink how it's presented and how we communicate with one another and with this remote learning. So with all of that, with all the fantastic ideas and strategies that Tierney has shared, I want to get you all to just talk briefly for a few minutes in some breakout rooms, give you a chance to introduce yourself, and just possibly share, one thing that has surprised you over the last almost 3 months in your situation, or something that you are going to take away from those strategies or those ideas to support you in the next. So this is the time my computer makes a chime whenever people leave, and I know being in a breakout room makes some teachers nervous because then you actually have to talk to one another. And unlike some other webinars, FI Connects is all about making those connections and sharing and talking. So if you're not comfortable, at least open up your mic and introduce yourself. But please feel free to experience the breakout room. We ask our students to do these things all the time, and as coaches, we ask our teachers to do this all the time. So please stick with us, and I'm going to place you in some breakout rooms. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And for those of everybody that's running away, my breakout room version is stalled. So we gotta love technology. So rather than try to force that, I'm curious, in the chat, same question. Feel free to open your mic. Hi, everybody. My name's Jacqueline. So when we're thinking about, anything that surprised you or any of these takeaways that you don't want to lose, considering the last 11 weeks.
Hey guys, this is Brian Whitson. I'm an instructional coach in Rowan, Salisbury. I think the thing that has really surprised me is just how much so many of our teachers gained skills. This previous school year, because our kids are now out and I'm out, a lot of my teachers that I worked with, spent a lot of time trying to avoid me or not making eye contact. And when we went to remote learning, just seeing how much so many of them grew in using different pedagogies, different approaches, different technologies. I mean, it was really amazing how quickly some of them became very proficient, even with like Zoom, and they never heard of it. So thinking about how much that our staff grew was amazing, and looking at the amount of PD that they did, we hope they'll translate that into practice as well. But just looking at how much they grew in professional development and learning they did was really just amazing for me. And taking away that factor of time and being limited when you're at school really had a huge, huge impact on that, I think.
Did anybody else find that too, that sounded like you were in high demand? And anyone else like to share? You're not alone there, Brian. So
I can, this is Kathy. I was kind of amazed. I had a Google Meet, I would call it the meetup, and I had regular virtual office hours, and a lot of our digital learning specialists did the same. And I was really surprised at how many people came in, and those that stuck with it came in. I had like my little 10 o'clock group that first thing in the morning, they would be there right when it was usually 10. I tried at 10 to 12. It was 10 to 11:30 on different days. But I think of anything that was the most successful during these weeks, that I had that open forum. People could come in, socialize, or ask questions. I did some learning sessions, real short ones. We troubleshooted. Sometimes I had a Q&A set up ahead of time, so if they wanted to target some questions and come in right away and then leave and do something else. But overall, I think just having that open time for teachers just to come in and have a place to meet. That was very successful. I'm in an elementary school with over 500 students and about 42 teachers. So that was my high point.
That's awesome. Anyone else like to share?
I'm Linda Meckes from Monroe High School in Union County. And I guess I was really surprised at how much I need structure even when I'm at home. To begin with, I was just so exhausted because I was so busy with 2 computers going and my phone going and all this stuff. So I found that having times for Google Meets when teachers knew I'd be there, or chats when they knew I'd be there, and then times where I was just working on my own projects made it a lot easier for me to live with all this.
You're not alone there. I mean, how many are like pulling longer hours than ever before, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to, office hours, they're a lifesaver. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we can't take care of those we're supporting and helping. And it's really hard. I think you're not alone there. I learned the hard way too. I'm like, why am I crashing?
On Saturday.
And just, I think closing tabs is also like a huge victory these days. So thank you for sharing that, because it's so true. I think right now that the summer is going to be a welcome break on the minds and hearts of a lot of our teachers, of our leaders, our coaches. But we're going to ramp back up again so quickly. And I'm sure many of you are already, like, you have meetings over the summer to coordinate and figure this out. Be an advocate for the time that you need to rest before you launch back in it all again, because if you are the model, and if you're doing that, your teachers will hopefully do that too. So in the time that we have left, I want to share a couple things with you all. I put in a link to our survey into the FI Connect chat box. And oh, one more thing, totally forgot, I dropped this in here this morning. And we had, the Friday Institute was also very integral in doing some learning remote supports webinars throughout the last month and a half. And that Google document, it's going to force a copy for something that was created as a preparing for next year's single point rubric. I love single point rubrics as a coach because it just gets straight to the point. As you can see here, I just dropped in the big categories that are on the single point rubric, but there are descriptions based on a remote learning plan, design plan that was developed by the Friday Institute. And this is a great, I give this to you as a copy that you can revise and edit and tweak to fit what's going to work for you, and perhaps something that can support and help facilitate those conversations as you're talking with teachers and as you know what they need. So just a resource I wanted to pass along to you. It was kind of created and very, very recently. So I just wanted to drop that in there. And then likewise, if you want to go ahead and make a copy of the chat, those 3 dots are going to be your best friends. So it will give you a transcript of the chat, so you can go back and grab any links that maybe you felt like you may have missed or wanted to save. And considering that it is practically summer, schools are winding down, our teachers and you all of us need a bit of a break. But my goal is to continue FI Connects in some way, shape, or form. And what that looks like to continue to foster support for not only coaches, but educators and principals. And what that looks like not only in the summer months, but in the fall. So I've been advocating at the Friday Institute for us to continue this effort. And I really want some feedback in order to let me know what would be helpful to you. What's going to be realistic for your timetable, because we all need to take a break and to rest. But, you know, having these opportunities to discuss, to come in, to have fantastic guest speakers. So let's thank Tierney again. Thank you so much. because we're all in this together and there's so many fantastic ideas to share. We got to support each other, right? So in that survey link in the chat, if you don't mind giving me some feedback, not only about what's resonating with you, but then how do you see this moving forward? What's going to support you? And you are a special group, being the coaches. You guys are going in, you're sharing, and you're disseminating all of this. So your voice really speaks loudly, especially to me. So please share in that feedback. And like I said, I mentioned earlier, the Teaching Remotely course, that's coming. It's free. If you're interested, you can register, and then we'll send you an email when it's ready. We are trying to develop and complete this course within the next 3 weeks. So it will be out there, and you can go in and grab ideas, resources, and feel free to pass along that link for registration to anyone you think would be interested. So again, I want to thank you in the 5 minutes that we have left. Thank you for joining us over these 11 weeks. It's hard to believe. This has been a passion project for me with FI Connects, so I appreciate you all coming back week to week and just sharing your ideas, being vulnerable and able to just share strategies and opening up the mic and going into a breakout room and just being here to share with one another. So thank you in advance for your feedback in the survey. The survey, when you complete it, it will auto-generate a certificate of participation. So if that's something you're interested in, just wait a moment and it will generate. And Amanda, to make a copy of the chat, I see your question. The 3 dots are going to help you click on that and you can save a copy of the chat. So again, I'm going to hang out for any additional questions. If you've got more questions for Tierney at all, or just want to share any ideas, we have the next 5 minutes that are yours. But we do have one more session scheduled for tomorrow, and that is focused on reviewing and recharging. It's geared toward educators. And we have another voice from the field, which is going to be Leslie, and her last name escapes me, from China Grove. Assistant Principal. Brian's going to remember it. What's her name?
Seckler.
Thank you. Leslie Scheckler. She's an assistant principal at China Grove Elementary, previously teacher, a coach. She's pretty awesome. So she's going to be sharing tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Same link, different button. Yes, thank you, Brian, for adding that in there. And if you're interested, again, all of our FI Connects, they now have titles, so you can figure out what they are. And we have a full playlist of everything that we've been sharing. So thank you all again. I know we throw a lot at you, but hopefully you can digest the parts that are going to work for you. And please keep in touch as we continue to move forward into the unknown. So thank you all so much for what you do, for being a coach. And again, thank you, Tierney, for some great information. I'm going to drop Tierney's contact information again into that chat. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask, or go ahead and have a fantastic day.
Thank you so much.